OMG. Sometimes things just don't go to plan. But I truly believe there are no creative failures, only creative experiments. My sketchbook entry this week felt like a disaster. It was messy and fiddly, and I got tangled up in materials and gadgets more times than was comfortable. But guess what? It was still valuable time because it made me feel something, learn something. I decided to try creating a sketchbook page just using stencils and paint. I kept going with the Acryla Gouache, which I've been dabbling in for a few weeks now, and this is what happened. The first thing I noticed was that the Acryla Gouache becomes quickly muted and dull when used with white. This doesn't happen in the same way with standard acrylic. You can see that my background is quite muddy and washed out, very average, even though I regularly use the same technique with my favourite acrylics with more impactful results. Next, I mixed a bright green and then stenciled on leaf shapes. But the consistency of the paint meant I ended up with leaf blobs rather than detailed stencil marks. Even though I welcome an organic result from stencil work with imperfect imprints, I think they look quite charming when they're slightly imperfect. Using the acrylic gouache in this way just really didn't work at all. But I did persist and layered on stencil shapes, creating a page of flowers. I did take a couple of detours from using the stencils at various points, but only because I knew a better way. I actually had to catch myself in the act and bring it back to the stencil. I found this rigid stencil restriction that I imposed on my sketchbook page frustrating, and I got myself into a bit of a mess. But I can see how for some people this may actually take the pressure off drawing and making shapes if you're lacking confidence. With a much more intentionally delicate way of applying the paint, or even using markers or pencils, you could create a really lovely artwork using this technique. Is it right for you? You'll never know if you don't give it a go. There were still definitely some gems to take away from this experience. My biggest takeaway this week is to notice your natural rhythm and become aware of how you respond under certain circumstances. For example, I felt an overwhelming need to dry each mark before moving on, and this hampered my creative flow. The acrylic gouache did not behave the way I expected, and generally I felt impatient with the process. But I know that there is power in self-awareness, because then you can make different choices next time. The process was just simply too slow for my creative energy, and that is okay. While I do use stencils in some of my work, it is occasional and sparingly. Using stencils for the whole artwork just does not satisfy my creative hunger. Similarly, the more I use the acrylic gouache paints, the more I recognise the subtle differences and an appreciation for my standard favourite Matisse Flow acrylics. They are similar, but when you are in such an intimate space with your paints, you notice the very subtle and small differences. I believe this is why we find favourite materials, ways of working, and setting ourselves up for success in our creative practices. This way we are maximising our experience and achieving flow quicker. That said, we will never expand if we do not continue to play and explore in our creative endeavours.